And welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. Joining me is Topaz. He just ran by. And if you want to be on the program, I'm flying solo today, as it usually goes around the holidays. But hey, there's a football game tomorrow, so you know that I'm going to be there. I'm not only going to be here tonight, I'm going to be on at halftime tomorrow and after the game, because I'm that kind of cow. And when you do something crazy like this for 19 years, then you start realizing that it's a sickness and you just kind of roll with it. Got a little bit of stuff to talk about today, as we have a game that's going to be played in nearly impossible conditions. And I'm personally hoping that the game ends up the way that I am about to analyze it. And it's not a heavy analysis, folks. I mean, there are some people who want to analytically just ram things up your butt. I'm not that guy. But I will say this. The weather that they are calling for, with winds up to 59 miles an hour in gust, which will happen by the lake. I know I have friends up there. I have a friend in Akron who is experiencing -3, -5 degree weather and -28 wind chill. And I'm telling you, it's going to be worse at the stadium tomorrow. They're saying the temperature will be around 12 degrees, but with those kinds of brutal gale force winds, you're going to be looking at 18 below to 20 below zero wind chill factor. And that's going to change the entire essence of the football game. Good evening, Ron. How are you? And, the brave people who are coming on the program at holiday season, and my buddy Rick May. Hi, Rick and Ron. The diehards, man. I appreciate it. Sorry you don't have families. No, you can say the same thing for me. This is what I do, and it's really kind of sad. The weather is really bad. It really is. And it's going to change the way the game is played. And there are some things that are happening. First of all, if you're living in a cave, Jack Conklin and the Browns have agreed on a 4-year extension worth $60 million, $31 million of which is guaranteed. You think of Conklin as having been in the league forever, and he does play hurt. He's only 28 years old, and this is a 4-year extension to keep that side of the line moving along. And there are going to be some people who say, well, he's old, he's injury prone, and this and that. You just don't have anybody that has stepped up in the absence of some of our line injuries and shown themselves to be anything special. And when that happens, you have no replacements, you sign extensions. And you've got a $230 million quarterback, and you have to protect him. So Jack Conklin it is, and that's for 4 years, $60 million. Here are some other things that have come out this afternoon, maybe even earlier. The Saints will be playing without Chris Olave and Jarvis Landry. Landry's been put on the IR. For all the people who are screaming about, not re-signing Jarvis Landry, it turned out to be a smart move. Only 25 receptions this year. He's been hurt. His ankle is injured now. IR, gone for the season. And I don't know what the future calls for Jarvis Landry, but right now his body is not letting him play. And had we relied on him, we'd have been in the same kind of a shit position that we've been all season long, with injuries, and he would not have been able to contribute the way that we would want him to contribute. Olave, on the other hand, a hamstring injury. He was ruled out actually yesterday. Olave is their brilliant wide receiver. I call him brilliant because the amount of yards he's amassed with Andy Dalton at quarterback is nothing short of amazing. He's had a really good rookie year, but he's gone. And so now they're without, and I'm not going to say 2 receivers, 1.5 receivers, but Olave is a open field threat. And without him, they're going to have problems. And with the weather, it's going to be problems passing the ball no matter what. It's the second game that Olave has missed this season, having sat out the loss to the Bengals in week 6 with a concussion. And of course, Landry has missed 5 games with an ankle issue. And the Saints are signing wide receiver Kirk Merritt to the active roster in Landry's place. And it sounds like something that we would do, bringing up Baldwin and those types of people off of the practice squad. New Orleans will also be without guard Cesar Ruiz, who's on injured reserve with a Liz Frank injury, and linebacker Pete Werner, who returned from an ankle injury that caused him to miss 4 games last week, but now has a compensatory issue with a hamstring. The Saints departed for Cleveland yesterday instead of Friday to stay ahead of bad weather. Probably a smart move on their part. But it's going to be really difficult as you see as I dig a little further. Derek is doing his own thing. I don't hear much from Derek. I figure between work and doing some of the work that he does on Browns After Dark and other podcasting things, that he's moved along, and I love that. I love when young people move on. Listen to me, young people. This show has always been here as a step-off point for people who have an interest in doing this type of thing. And I know that Derek loves the Browns. He also really enjoys doing podcasting, and it's all good between he and I. It's just that he's young, man, and he's moving. He's looking to move forward, and this is a chance for him to kind of grow inside this. And for me, I'm just a hobbyist. So, it's great to give opportunities to people so that they can find their way into something far better than this, which I think he has. That Browns After Dark show gets a lot of views and has a lot of participation. So I think he's doing real well. There is more. The Browns players have gone out of their way to speak glowingly of Jarvis Landry. And, and I think everybody who watches the show knows how much I think of Jarvis Landry. He's an ultimate professional. But you have to understand, injuries, fans get upset with injuries. It's like, is he injured again? But it's like, if you went out there and played this game, you'd be fucking hurt in 10 minutes. The game that's going to be played tomorrow is going to be played on the hardest surface known to man. This is going to be fucking ugly. All right. And it's, we're going to add Dave Talevsky. Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Doing good, Moo. How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks. Thanks again for your tweet today. I think that you're looking at if it's easy, and we've seen quarterbacks do it this year on a couple of occasions when their helmets hit the field and they end up concussed. Well, why don't you make the turf like 3 times harder? Because that's what you're going to have. You're going to have no traction. You're going to have it's going to be shock force, and it's going to be really hard to play this football game. And I know, go ahead, Dave.
My dad was telling me that what they should do is they should make like these chirps to be heated underground in some way.
There have been fields that had underground heating systems with them, but when you get into a situation where it's this cold, this is Lambeau Field kind of shit, and nothing's going to change what it is. I mean, honestly, if I were in charge of the league, I would postpone the game to another day. It happened because of snow, but it wasn't nearly as bad. All right. They just couldn't clear the snow in Buffalo. So the game got moved indoors to Detroit. But the weather was nowhere near as bad. This is a true lake effect storm that is just wiping out and moving across Ohio, is now on top of Buffalo, and is moving toward Rochester, moving easterly. And it's brutal. It's bad news. It's a really bad storm. And I don't think the game should be played. I really don't. But we're not here to make to make rules for the NFL. They have, God only knows, enough on their own.
Moo.
Hi, Bronk. How you doing?
Fine, man. It's like 50 degrees here, and I'm walking around outside in a hoodie, so I'm in a great mood.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, even here in Florida, we're having a precipitous temperature drop. And I know people laugh about this.
Oh, I was going to ask you, are the iguanas falling from the trees down there?
They're not iguanas, for God's sakes.
Or
They're
whatever they are.
geckos. They're
Geckos,
geckos.
yeah.
They're not iguanas. You know, I tried to write a song called "I Want to Be Iguana." It never went anywhere.
Iguana.
I wanna
It was
be iguana. Yeah, it never went anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah, but right now we're in a precipitous temperature drop, even here in Florida. This storm is so huge, it's pushing cold air all the way into the south.
How big
We were
is it?
72 degrees. To point out what's going on here, we were 72 degrees outside at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay.
Yeah.
And by tonight, it's going to drop down to 35.
That's cold.
I mean, for
That's
Florida, that's cold. So you
It's
can
fucking
imagine.
cold. No, that's cold for here, too.
Yeah, and you can imagine
Cold
what
for
it's
England.
doing, up north. It's absolutely crazy.
I was without power for 8 hours today.
Oh, really?
That sucks.
Yeah,
What part of Ohio were you in?
I'm in Akron.
Oh, you're in Akron?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I have another friend in Akron who reported all kinds of bad news shit up there. Yeah, very cold. Very cold.
So the Cavs game, are they going ahead with this thing? 'Cause
Yes.
they-
Everybody's going ahead with it as money and its schedule.
yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, that's what it is. But, I'm looking, my analysis of this football game is the Saints this year. I mean, they're not a particularly good team,
No.
but with the weather that we're going to be playing in, it's going to be crazy. And Keith is reporting exactly what Double P is reporting, that it's -4 Fahrenheit. It's bad news. This game is going to be won and lost in the trenches. Think of it this way. You can go back and pass, all right? And pass rushing will be a lot harder. And people don't understand, in this kind of bitter cold weather with, a good offensive lineman can dance a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
And when there's no traction, the guy can get pushed out. If you try an outside rush, really on an ice rink, which is what you're looking at, you're just going to be pushed aside. You're going to fly out of the view of the camera. That's what happens. But the problem is that you're throwing into a consistent 29 to 30 mile an hour wind with gusts of 59. You don't know when the gusts are coming up. And, and it's freezing cold out there, and people don't have feeling in their extremities because it's freezing cold. So passing, as attractive as it might be from a time perspective, you're not going to be able to throw the ball down the field. So here's the first thing. Andy Dalton has a noodle for an arm at this point in his career to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, him throwing in the wind is like me pissing in the wind. It ain't going to go very far, and it's going to come back and haunt me. Andy Dalton, and I don't have anything against Andy Dalton, but it's going to be really hard for him. He is a shorter thrower, and they're going to have to use that to their advantage, because you look at their running game, and they don't have one. The problem for this team is not only that Jameis Winston just didn't work out the second time around in New Orleans, the fact that Dalton is, getting the starts at all these games will tell you something. Kamara, who is a really great receiving running back, is only averaging 3.9 yards a carry. The offensive line is not doing their job. Melvin Ingram is only averaging 3.8 yards per carry. So it's not specific to one running back. And it's really very, very tough. And Andy Dalton isn't going to get you anything with his legs. So that's the first thing. The second thing is
That's
we already...
the main reason.
Go ahead.
That's the main reason why you got to keep an eye on Taysom Hill.
And yeah, Taysom Hill has played in 13 games, but he's only attempted 17 passes. But yes, he is the guy who can run the type of offense, and I hate to say a collegiate offense, but basically with a lot of quarterback option reads and things of that nature, and he can do damage in the open field. So he would become an additional running back in the backfield, and especially if it's just hopeless to pass the ball, that's the kind of thing you're going to look at. Misdirection plays will probably play a prominent role. If you can get somebody leaning the wrong way, all you have to do is put a finger on them and they'll slide out of the way. It's going to be interesting the way this plays out, but you have to be able to get yards off the line of scrimmage running plays. For the Browns, they're getting Pokic back.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
He's starting.
I saw that. Yeah.
He's just not off the injured reserve. He's starting. All right. So that puts us in a better position. You got Conklin pumped up because he's got his extension. And, we have our line playing whole for the first time in some time. And we have running backs who can slam into the line. It's going to be hard to cut and do all the things that Nick Chubb does. But if you can get and constantly run for 4 or 5 yards a crack and just keep wearing down the defense, that's most likely how the job gets done, that and short passing to running backs. And maybe we will actually use Kareem Hunt in the passing game. Yeah, I don't know.
I think I thought it was funny you said he's pumped up with his extension. I thought that was humorous, but
yes,
maybe that was just me.
Yes. But, receiving, to put this in perspective, Olave's 940 yards of receiving yards this year, 63 receptions. And the next,
that's crazy. That's
number two.
Yak
is Kamara is number 2 with 53 receptions and half the yardage, 446 yards. They have a tight end, Johnson, who is got 35 receptions out of 55 targets. And to be honest, Olave with 63 receptions on 102 targets, he's by far the most targeted guy on the team. So, and he's not playing. So that really hurts them. The sacks are pretty good. The defense does get quarterback pressure on quarterbacks. Davis, their linebacker, has 6.5 sacks. Ellis, a linebacker, 5.5. So they're not afraid to blitz linebackers. Defensive end Jordan with 5.5 sacks. And Onyemata, who I don't really know, he's a defensive tackle, has 3.5 sacks. And they're when you look at this down the line, they have a total of 38 sacks this year, which is more than Andy Dalton has been sacked, only 18 times. So they bring a pass rush. The question is, how meaningful will that pass rush be? You've got to control the line of scrimmage. Look at Wayne Gold out here. My God. -10 in Montana with a -31 wind chill. Woo! Whereabouts in Montana, Wayne? My gosh. I've actually been in Montana. Oh yeah. Yeah, I was in Montana. I was in Butte. And where's the university up north? Oh, man. Kalispell. Where's... I forget the name of the town. Because I lived in Spokane, Washington for a brief moment of time, and I had to come across that way and went over into Montana. A beautiful country out there. I'd never been to Bozeman. I would have loved to have really been in the absolute blue sky area. But it's known for getting cold out there. Absolutely cold. What can I say except if they can't run the football against the Browns defensive line, game's over.
Yeah.
Game's over because, again, I'm assuming that neither team is going to be able to do a whole hell of a lot, but this is the type of game where trying to kick field goals is going to be virtually impossible with a guy like we have, Cade York, who can't plant on a solid field. I would hate to see what it might look like and what he might tear in his thigh muscle if he actually tried to plant sideways on a hard field. It's going to be about touchdowns, whether you get them on turnovers, which is going to be a factor in this game. Short yardage situations, as far as fourth down situations where you sneak the ball, or defensive touchdowns on turnovers, that sort of thing. I believe that 2 touchdowns, any team, the first team that reaches 2 touchdowns in this game could be the winner chicken dinner. I just don't see this, unless something crazy would happen and one team would fall behind so far they'd have to take ridiculous chances, and then the point total might run up against them. I think both teams are going to play pretty close to the vest, is what I think.
Well,
And
I think Deshaun Watson's going to have a big game running the ball, doing
it gives us
readouts and stuff. But the weather is going to be colder than I think even the Red Right 88 game, which is the coldest game that pops into my mind off the top of my head, and that was like 14-12 the Raiders. So the big thing is the wind. I mean, I'm looking at BBC; it's saying 50-mile-an-hour gusts all day.
59.
So
that's what they're
it's
calling for in
crazy.
Cleveland tomorrow, and
So,
that's in the
I
afternoon
mean,
at game time.
we've seen these teams play in wind before, when it's been normal temperatures. So I think it's just cruel. I think the game should have been canceled. It's just cruel. I mean, the NFL's lucky that nobody dies in the stands or no one gets seriously injured playing the game. Because I think the field will cut up, and that will probably be a bit of a mud bath by the time it's the fourth quarter.
I want to get Wayne to, you don't have to worry, dude. Anthony Schwartz is gone on the IR. He's gone for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
he cannot make a guest appearance.
We'll never see him in a Browns uniform ever again.
No, and that's done, over and done with.
Yeah.
That was a prolonged experiment that went the wrong way.
Updating here, from what I can see, it said that probably wind gusts up to 40.
Yeah.
All right,
But
that's updated.
I think pretty much the entire league is going to have low-scoring games this week because this cold is going across most of the East Coast games.
Sure.
Yeah, it's going to be, getting into the end zone. That's why running the ball is going to be so important. You're going to need to use tight ends, and you're going to have to use running backs in your passing game. And Bronk brought up a good point with Deshaun Watson and his legs being able to do what Taysom Hill would do for the Saints,
Yeah,
but also be a threat to throw the football.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think he'll probably get some plays against us and Watson running the ball, because I don't even think you want to hand off. What did we hear? Like, the ball's a brick. What was it? Was that from the Red Right 88 game? It's like catching the brick. Who said that? Ozzy or somebody?
Oh, that game was crazy, and this is going to be worse. We've seen it before, and it's not pretty. I got a bunch of quotes from the New Orleans Saints players. This is what the Saints players are saying. I just want to read you these quotes. I don't necessarily think that's the case. Who we're talking to is head coach Dennis Allen of the Saints. We've done all the work we can do in terms of knowing what the weather is going to be like, but ultimately we're going to go out on Saturday and go play a game. I think we've just got to see what the conditions are on Saturday, and then we'll have to adjust accordingly.
Stefanski said the same thing.
Yep. And we've got to have contingency plans either way, he goes on to say. It's just another factor that you have to take into account as you're putting in your game plan. And this is what we'd expect to hear from coaches. But when you get into, and then he starts, blowing shit up Deshaun Watson's ass and all of that. Here's Saints punter Blake Gillikin. It doesn't feel particularly great. It's not like it's 80 degrees outside. We'll do our best to stay warm. Guys back in the equipment room got us right. That's what the
Gillikin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking
the
Gilligan
skipper.
for a minute.
Here's Trevor Penning, offensive tackle. It's not what you really want, I guess. It sucks. but there's a lot of mental toughness in it. It takes mental toughness to not get cold. You've got to play no matter the circumstances. This does not sound like talk of a confident team. This is a 5-9 team.
Scared, man.
It's a 5-9 team that plays in a goddamn dome in a part of the country that never sees snow. And to be very honest with you, at 5-9, they're not playing for a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah.
So, and looking at all these things, here's their center. They're a very well-structured group. They work well together. They fly around in defense and hit, very athletic at the second level as well. Here's what Calvin Throckmorton,
Great name.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait. I'm super excited for this game. I've never played in the snow or that cold. I'm from the Northwest and like the cold, so I can't wait. Well, it's going to happen.
Not that cold.
Andy Dalton, I've played in cold ones. I've played in some cold ones in Cleveland. I played in a snow game in Cleveland in 2016. Just the AFC North, those games were cold at the end of the year. There's not one that stands out. That's Andy Dalton. I think the wind will be more of a factor than the temperature.
I agree.
Wrong again, Andy.
Wow.
Wrong again, because the wind adds to the woes.
Yeah, well,
right?
Yeah.
I think it says 30 to 40 mile an hour winds. I'm getting 40 from somebody here in the chat room, and I've been reading 50s online over at AccuWeather and weather.com. Once you get out there and see where the wind is blowing in the stadium and all that stuff, what direction it's going, it may affect some things. We won't know until we get out there. In Cleveland Stadium, it doesn't blow one way. That's the thing. Coming off the lake, there's nothing to stop that wind. And I think people don't realize lake effect. Tom Holly, only 19 below wind chill, and he's in Buffalo, New York. So yeah, we knew the storm had really done a number on that area as well. But the wind is not going to be consistent. It's not going to be something you can say, we want to take this way. There will be a better way to decide to be playing offensively and a direction to be in. But if you're a kicker, the ball's not going to go anywhere when you strike it because it will be a cinder block. Yeah. And, for passing the ball, if you want to throw the ball down the field, you've got to elevate the throw. And what comes into that stadium and what direction it's swirling in, God only knows.
You don't have to worry about anybody catching the ball because you won't be able to catch it. So there won't be any interceptions because if those guys could catch, they'd be wide receivers. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think the Browns have more talent and more motivation in this game. I mean, if you're the Saints and you're coming up here to play this game, and you're a player, you can't even be worried about your management isn't even going to evaluate you because they'll just throw out whatever you do in this game and ignore it. Like if you're absolute shit in this game, it's not like you're going to get cut, at the end of the season. They're just going to say it's an outlying game. So there is absolutely no motivation on the parts of the Saints to play this game other than pride and that it's like whatever incentives they have per game,
It's one of the reasons why you go out in a game like this, and if you can put the wood to them early, they got no reason to want to stay in Cleveland and play.
Yeah, they have no reason to live, man.
If you can get on top of them so that they're far enough behind, when I say far enough behind, I mean 2 touchdowns. I'm not talking about any like what happened with Pittsburgh in the playoffs where we went up 28-0. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about 2 touchdowns and controlling the ball and the time and forcing them to have to try to gain yardage through the air. If it gets to that point early that we can get into the end zone a couple times, I think that they're just going to fold their hand. I just don't see a 5-9 team that's going nowhere playing in this with guys who, it's easy to say, I can envision what it's like, but you're playing in a dome and you have to come out to this shit. I mean, the Browns players don't know how to play in this shit.
No.
And they play it in cold weather on a fairly regular basis. So that Jadeveon Clowney is out. That's a concussion. And John Johnson is questionable. Do we have any update on John Johnson, or is that game time decision?
Game time, I would expect him to play, though.
All right. Clowney is just a guy who, he's only had 2 sacks and 3 tackles for a loss this year. It's the reason he didn't get big money in the free agent market, because he's a solid player, but he has never been what people expected when he came out of South Carolina. That's just...
Well, yeah, I think it was the number 1 pick, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he never got, exactly what he was supposed to be. And as we've said, Ethan Pocic is back, and according to Stefanski, he'll be fully activated, and he looked just like himself in practice, and that he looked good.
Well, that's massive, because, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think one of these linemen probably will struggle in this game. So if we have like Froholt and somebody else on the bench, they might be needed.
The only thing that I can think of that might work from an offensive passing perspective is if you can get and it's hard to get separation from a guy in the secondary, but if you can make a stop and go kind of pattern where you just can't get up to speed, if you can get behind somebody and hit a seam, and Watson can throw a seed, you might have a chance to do something. But anything that goes down the field with air underneath it, you can just forget about that. And that will be intercepted. It could float literally 5 yards in the air into the hands of a defender. Not a good thing. It's been, it's been since Monday since I've done a program. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention just how bad Baker Mayfield looked.
Wow, yeah.
And his career is really going to be as a backup quarterback who might come in and be occasionally dangerous.
Yeah, but he's Colt McCoy now, I guess.
I would tell you what I'm seeing, and that's that the decision about Jarvis Landry turned out to be a correct one. The decision about Baker Mayfield turned out to be a correct one. Now, what I will say is this: $230 million to a quarterback, we ain't going to be able to evaluate that until next season. And part of that evaluation is going to be what you put around him. But when we talk about a quarterback situation, I mean, I'm looking here, watching Zach Wilson and the Jets play. I've talked a lot about Saleh, their head coach, and that I love him as a defensive coordinator. I'd love to have him as a defensive coordinator. He's not going to get fired from the Jets. But the Jets now are below 500. They've lost 4 games in a row. And no matter what they say, White was the guy that came in and had them playing better, and Zach Wilson has been a bow wow. And, the thing that made the loss worse for the Jets is that the Jets pulled him in the third quarter, and a guy named Chris Streveler, who I don't even know who he is, came in. He was a practice squad quarterback, called in a couple of days before the game, and he actually moved the football better than Zach Wilson did. The fans were booing Zach Wilson. And no matter how much boola you got, no matter how much enthusiasm you got, Saleh is running out of options that he can put on the field. And I want to point out that the Jets don't have an abundance of wide receiver help. They have Garrett Wilson. Well, I got to say that Zach Wilson has not come around. We've seen it happen a lot of times in Cleveland. And this guy was a high draft pick, and it just hasn't worked out. But it's the hardest thing in the world being a coach in the NFL, because everything that Saleh has done to get them to a point where they were 7-4 and in contention has all been flushed down the toilet now. And now he's going to have to deal with the other side of being the head coach for a team like the New York Jets that has a history of losing, and that's that the more he screams and rants and raves, the players are going to tune him out. This is what happens to guys who are traditional defensive coordinators when they become head coaches. The Jets' offense is not good enough, and Saleh knows nothing about it. And what's going to happen there eventually, if they don't get somebody in there who was able to put a professional grade offense on the field, is that all that enthusiasm will wane and this losing streak will continue. And I say that because of the Browns situation as well. You can put a $230 million quarterback in and say, well, he's looking more comfortable, and boy, he moves a lot better than Jacoby Brissett. But unless the wide receivers start getting separation, that's not going to happen tomorrow. But, until that happens, it's hard to evaluate or to justify a $230 million quarterback unless you give him pieces on the field. And that's what's going to be the issue. And we'll be seeing that next year. This year, I think tomorrow the Browns will win. I think everything in my analysis will tell me they're going to win. There's only one thing that could happen in this game, and that's that the defensive line of the Browns decides to take a powder again. That's how the Browns lose this football game. If they start committing stupid-ass penalties and if they start biting on fakes and having messed up coverages, they could be the ones giving up the 2 touchdowns by making blunders, and they will lose the game.
I'm probably one of the only people here that I've got them winning out, honestly, because we got the better quarterback in all the other matchups.
Yeah, I think that we're in a position to win these games. I just think the only thing that can go wrong for the Browns is if their defensive line does what it has done a number of weeks this year, which is just take a break and stop playing. And our defensive secondary, which has on numerous occasions this year just allowed men to run free in the secondary because of broken coverages. But all things being what they are, I think the Browns should win this game. I'm going to say the Browns will win 17-10, but I know better. By giving a score like that, that assumes that either team could kick a field goal in this weather. It would have to be lined up right in front of the goalpost, and that's no assurance that Cade York won't kick it west, or east. So, my feeling is I'm saying it's going to be a touchdowns difference. It could be a nail biter until the end from the standpoint that nobody's going to be able to pull away in this game. That's entirely possible, but I think the Browns have a much better chance of winning this football game. And Double P, when Baker said, this morning I woke up feeling dangerous. I mean, my response at the time was, I wish you woke up every morning feeling dangerous. But the fact of the matter is that isn't the case.
Yeah, he doesn't.
He sometimes he's good. Sometimes he's not good. Sometimes he's indescribably bad. Double P has the Browns winning 20-13. If you put 20 points on the board in this kind of weather, you're going to need some help with field position. I can tell you that defense is going to have to get some kind of turnover action. Rick May, you don't think there's going to actually be 4 field goals? Oh, he's missing both extra points.
Yeah, I think this would be. I think he's right about missed extra points today because
I think that
they might not even go for the kicks and just go for 2. I think
that's what I'm thinking. Also,
I'm thinking that instead of trying to kick extra points, there's going to be teams going for 2, and I'll say the Browns are going to win 15-12.
I remember that 6-3 Eric Mangini win over Buffalo.
I do too.
That was horrible.
It was awful to watch, and that's what Tom's basically going with 3-0, a baseball score.
Well, I would say it'd be more likely to be 2-0 than 3-0. Yeah, I mean,
safety. Who knows?
Is definitely in play with fumbled snaps and fumbled punts and all that shit, all that good stuff.
From Montana, 1612 Browns.
What worries me is that everybody's picking the Browns, and when we do that, we fuck up. We
Well,
absolutely fuck up. So
I'm not prescient. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the game. I can only tell you from an overview perspective what should happen in the game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's got to be fight in the dog, and we'll see which team wants to pack it up and go home and say "mommy" earlier.
Yeah, because that's what it's all about. I mean, I think, like I said, they shouldn't be playing, but there is no coverage in American sports, in any of them, for like weather. I mean, even baseball struggles to make up its games, and it's just crazy. I mean, over here, if there was like this sort of weather, it'd be a frozen pitch, and the game would be canceled. Because you can't play, soccer, football on a ice cold frozen pitch. It's illegal. Rip up your legs.
Here's something. So I'm done talking about the Browns because it's all going to spell itself out at 1:00 tomorrow. But there's more stuff I want to talk about before I get out of here. All the shit I hear about Deshaun Watson, all the shit, that story, and I know that Deshaun Watson, what he did was the stuff of which therapy is made. He obviously has to learn a more healthy relationship and view of women. I certainly understand that. But the way people who are hateful have accused him of being a rapist, and that Trevor Bauer is coming off of a suspension now because they've shortened his suspension, and thinking to myself, here's a guy who played in Cleveland. Here's a guy who literally strangled somebody into unconsciousness during consensual sex. And I will say that the sex that happened with Deshaun Watson was consensual because the women were paid. Okay, they accepted the money. I don't care what the after argument is. If you accept the money, and if the session is finished, okay, and you're getting paid and he's leaving the door, and some of them are saying, hey, come back again, that's consensual. The woman who is suing Trevor Bauer acknowledges that it is consensual, but it wasn't consensual that he strangle her into unconsciousness or punch her in the stomach and bruise her physically. That is assault. And I can't figure out why so little is said about Trevor Bauer and why so much is said about Deshaun Watson. And Trevor Bauer was an all-star pitcher. Trevor Bauer was paid good money to go to Los Angeles. Trevor Bauer spent his time in Cleveland, a year in Cincinnati, got his way to a big contract, and he's a sick motherfucker. You want to talk about a sick motherfucker? There were two other women who said that he did the same thing to them. I get so fucking tired when it's a black man accused of things that way and in that terminology, when right here, we knew Bauer was weird when he was in Cleveland. Did he really cut his finger on a drone? We don't really know what happened to him. But all I know is when they took him out of a game, he threw a ball over the center field wall because he had anger management issues, and he's strangling people and punching women. Is that the deal? How's about a little consistency? I don't want Trevor Bauer on the field. I don't want to have anything to do with Trevor Bauer. And to be honest with you, any woman who would allow herself to be beaten and come back a second time, I don't want to have anything to do with her either. But let's call assault what it is. You leave bruises on people and you're forcing people, then you have committed an assault. I just wanted to make that real clear for viewers who can't seem to figure it out for some reason. And it isn't that hard to figure it out. And I don't want to dwell on it either because it makes me sick just thinking about it. Cavaliers we can finish with, though. They're playing tonight at home against the Raptors. Siakam is coming off a 52-point performance. I do not have updated information on Evan Mobley, who is experiencing knee soreness. If somebody could help me, David, you're my man when it comes to this kind of stuff. If you could find out if there was a 4:30 call on Evan Mobley and whether he's playing tonight or not, because that is going to change, potentially change the outcome of the game, because we're not going to have anyone who can stay with Siakam down low. And that would be Mobley, who would be able to be the rim protector in that instance.
Yeah, I'll try to find something.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things about this game is the Raptors haven't been as good as what they thought, and the Cavaliers, man, did they manhandle the Bucks. Whoa.
Yeah, I didn't see it, so tell me about it. I didn't watch it.
They came out and played defense like they haven't played all year.
Wow.
I mean,
Finally shut down Brooke Lopez.
That shouldn't be so hard. They made, Antetokounmpo made 45 points. He scored 45 points, but they made him work for every single one of them. And nobody else. Drew Holiday, nothing. I mean, they threw whatever they could throw at the Cavaliers that they had. They don't have Chris Middleton, which would be an important piece for them. But still, this team without Chris Middleton had beaten up on the Cavaliers twice in games that weren't close. And they were both in Milwaukee. This game, the Cavaliers came out loaded for bear. And, man, they play defense. I got to tell you, it was impressive. They were whipping the ball around, and there was always a Cavalier with a hand in their face. And they were turning the ball over. I think they turned the ball over, like in the first half, like 16 times. The Cavaliers were just like fire ants, just all over them. Wow. And the impressive part, they went into the break with like an 18-point lead at half, and Donovan Mitchell hadn't even gotten off. He was having a bad game, and it didn't matter. And then Donovan Mitchell comes out for the second half of the game, and he's wearing the warrior look. And it's like, oh, shit. And he comes out, and he immediately, top of the key, throws up a three, nothing but net. When that thing splashed through, it was over. I mean, he went off and ended up scoring like 34 points in the game. And to the Bucks' credit, they are a championship caliber team, and they came back in the end, not ever really penetrating 5 points, but for the most part, we're down double digits the whole game. And I thought the Cavaliers, when they trimmed the lead down, played with composure and did what they had to do. You got the feeling that they made their run, and the Cavaliers were about to run it back the other way. Team is amazing to watch. And Wayne's asking a question: is it too early to say that the Mitchell trade is the single greatest non-LeBron acquisition in team history? I mean, here's the thing. Donovan Mitchell is happy and at peace with where he is. Things didn't end up great in Utah. And I understand Utah has played some nice basketball this year, but it's kind of going south for the Jazz. And I think Markkanen is doing everything he can do. And David Talevsky has come through again. Mobley will play, and Lamar Stevens is back tonight. But still, Okoro will be starting. David, you're a true pasture head. You're a cow. You dig because you have hooves.
I appreciate that.
That's impressive, man.
It works to have a phone and an iPod, so you can just do like multitask and search things up.
Absolutely. I mean, it's great having people help out, because I'm a one-man band and I don't play that many instruments. So, Ronald Forgas is saying Brown 16-6. Let's hope you're right. Is it the greatest single non-LeBron acquisition? Well, of course, LeBron was drafted. And my feeling is, as far as a trade is concerned, it may be the first absolute situation where the Cavaliers received a superstar caliber player in the prime of his career. You take a look at when the Cavaliers got Shawn Kemp. If you look back at the history of the Cavaliers, the people that they would get, we got Kevin Love to make a championship run, but his best years were behind him already then when he played for Minnesota. Big names just don't come to Cleveland. And I don't know. And honestly, I was never like into Utah Jazz basketball. So when they said, made this deal and gave up all this ridiculous stuff for Donovan Mitchell, I'm like, and I looked him up. He went to He went to Louisville, and it's like, all right. And I looked at some of the stuff online of his videos, and I was like, all right. You just don't get a feel for this player until you watch him night in and night out. When his attitude is good, and I can't say what happened in Utah, so I'm not going to go over the edge and just give him undue praise, because this is a small sample size. But he is the exact kind of player that elevates a team from being what we were last year, which was on the outside knocking on the door, to a guy that you can put the ball in his hands and he's death at the end of a game for the opposition. The guy can score in so many ways, from behind the arc, from mid-range. He can drive to the basket. He can draw fouls. He gets foul calls, folks. It wasn't just Giannis getting to the free throw line. It was like, what was it, 13 to 14 or something free throws that Donovan Mitchell made? Mitchell was getting to the free throw line because he gets those calls. He's a legitimate superstar. And in that regard, we don't see that in Cleveland. So yeah, I'm like geeked about this because, when you're in a close game and you know how many games come down to final possessions, especially in the playoffs, and you have a guy who's played 4 years in the playoffs, 3 or 4 years, Donovan Mitchell's been in the playoffs. He's experienced and seasoned for his age. And man, I want the ball in his hands. And I want Darius Garland to be able to learn how to play as a ball distributor and not have to worry about, the thing about Darius, for some reason this year, driving way too far down the lane. I don't know. It's like leaving his feet and trying to throw the ball backwards and going out of bounds. The smart thing for him is to pull up inside the free throw line, because what teams are doing is they're going to lure him to the rim because he's not very tall or strong and he can do dipsy-do stuff, but people will block his shot more often than not when he's going to the rim. If he he can get around anybody with a dribble. I mean, Darius, when he's pushing too hard, turns the ball over too much. But
it's not only that, but
go ahead.
I also kind of have an issue. Sometimes I feel like he takes really ridiculous shots.
Well, that is what emerged this year. And you're referring to the 3-point shots that are really ill-timed. And it's almost like, well, it's not just Donovan who can do this. I can do this too. What's happening is his shot selection, when his shot selection is better, it changes everything. And think of it this way, and just visualize, he gets around his guard, the guy who's guarding him, and he's able to wheel in just inside the free throw line. A big has now only 2 options: can come out and meet him before he gets to the hole, or lay back. They've been laying back because 2 things can happen. If they don't lay back, then a lob pass, easy to either Mobley or to Allen. And what they were doing is they were saying, we're not going to come out and meet him. We're just going to lay back and let him come to us. And he was doing it. Now, all of a sudden, it's like he's rediscovered the fact that he can just stop inside the free throw line and shoot a little fadeaway, and he doesn't miss that shot. And that opens up everything because now the guard can't guard him that close and tight, because that's what they've been doing this year to him. Is really the second he gets over the midcourt line, people are coming up on him to try to get on top of him. If you give him enough space, he'll bury you with 3-point shots too. But he was rushing these shots, and they weren't coming organically within the scheme of the offense. But he needs to be a ball distributor. Lamar Stevens isn't big enough to really get a job done. I really would like to see more of Diakite getting an opportunity off the bench, but I'm not going to get my way because he's on a two-way with the Charge down in Canton, and he's only allowed by rules to play so many games. So we're not going to get a real good look at him. And I would agree that Evan Mobley has not made the step that we were hoping that he would make from year 1 to year 2, but the guy he lost the rookie of the year voting to, Scotty Barnes, is doing worse in his second year than he did in his first year, in his rookie year when he won rookie of the year, kind of questionably. But Mobley's numbers have at least started coming up so that he's really in the 16-8, 16-9, 16 points, 9 rebound kind of player. And if he wants to be more than that, he has to put on muscle, put on weight, and he's got to work, and the offense has to work to get him into certain positions, and he has to improve his 3-point shot. That's what it amounts to. You just looked at Giannis out there and remember what Giannis looked like when he came into the league, and he is so chiseled now. I mean, people bump off him. You can't stop him. He's a freight train. It's like LeBron, just a brick shithouse. Mobley is so light in the britches that, there are guys who could chest him up and stop him from going to the basket. And he starts that head and shoulder fake stuff. He needs to put on weight, but good weight. And that means weight room. That means working harder. And we'll see whether he has that in him. If we can play defense like we did, Ron Shane, we can win with 114 points. But a lot of it has to do, it helps that Mobley will be out there because Pascal Siakam is a guy who could hurt you from outside, from inside. He's quick off the whirl. He can get the ball up left-handed under the basket, right-handed. He's got a quick second jump. All of the things you look for. He's become a fine NBA player and somebody who doesn't get talked about nearly as much as he should. But I love this Cavs team. I think they're fun to watch, and I think that that's going to be a treat. A 7:30 start. If you're not spending time with family, sit down and check it out. It'll be a good one.
Or 7:45, as the case may be, whenever the family get around is starting. Yeah.
Exactly. So I've said
I'll be watching the game tonight.
And I hope they win because they're 22-11. You take a look. The Cavaliers are playing at like a 52 win, 53 win season pace.
Well, best home record in the NBA.
I mean, 22-11 is a damn good record. And it isn't that they're just beating people who are stiffs. They're playing competitively with a lot of teams that are good teams and winning some of them. And I get the feeling that they can gain even more traction and confidence by proving to themselves. And again, we have the same situation as the last thing I'll say tonight. We're 0-2 against the Raptors this year. The Raptors have handed us our ass twice on the floor. And the Cavaliers need to come in with the same attitude they did against the Bucks, which was the same situation going in, to prove that we can play with teams who are, even though the record doesn't show it right now, the Raptors are a team that will be fighting for the playoffs, and the Bucks are an elite team. So if we prove that we can beat these people, then it's a matter of proving we can do more damage on the road, where our record, 6-9 or whatever the hell it is, not as good as it should be. So that's it. And thank you everybody for tuning in, and thank you, Bronk. Thank you, David, as always. Greatly appreciated, and we will see you again tomorrow at halftime and after the game, and I hope you'll be there to join me. Until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.
Go Cavs.